All right, folks, it's time for video number 3 in our little AR-10 series. Video number 1, we built the lower. Video number 2, we built the upper. And here in video number 3, we're going to shoot it. My plans for this video started off modest, but as I started pulling bullets off the shelf that I wanted to test, we're actually going to load up 50 rounds. So I want to cast a really wide net so we can get a good idea of what sort of accuracy we can expect. 6 different bullets, 5 different powders. So hopefully this should be a pretty fun little video, assuming we don't blow our face off. Which brings me to your comments and questions, or comments and advice, I should say. There are a couple things I want to cover before we get to loading ammo. First, well, somebody had asked about the weight of the setup. So kind of naked with no scope, but the full gun was about 10 pounds. Then I mounted a scope on it. I put my suppressor on it. I put a bipod on it. So kind of in its heaviest configuration, it was about 14.5 pounds. So this is not a light gun. Now, when deer season comes around, if I want to hit the woods with this guy, it's not that hard to start trimming some weight. And the first place is going to be with this, with the big Magpul PRS stock. These guys are super heavy. So in a hunting configuration with a lighter stock and optics and maybe a suppressor, I could probably hit the woods with about 10 pounds. Maybe 10, 11 pound configuration, something like that. Now, the next thing that was definitely brought up the most, and I really should have talked about it in video 2 when we were installing our barrel, but when you're using a torque wrench and you're using a barrel wrench that extends the length of the torque wrench, it changes the amount of torque on that barrel nut. Was that confusing enough? Let me lay it out for you here. This is the configuration we used in that video. Torque wrench with the Tapco tool, and this last notch here is the barrel nut. Yeah, on that side. So that is a little over 4 inches from the center of that barrel nut slot back to our 1/2 inch drive here. What that means is the 65 foot-pounds that I dialed up on my torque wrench in that video was almost 15 foot-pounds off. So my barrel nut, as the upper sits right now, is at 80 foot-pounds. Now, there are websites where you can go on and calculate how much difference this extension is going to make. And this distance is a huge deal. And I'll tell you why I didn't address it in the last video, or why it didn't really dawn on me to go ahead and consider it, is because I haven't been building AR-15s very long, and most of the hand guards I use are BCM, and this is the BCM barrel nut wrench, and Midwest Industries, that is this guy. Now, in the case of these two, it's not all that far from the center of the barrel to our drive. Here, we're looking at like 1.5 inches. Yep, a little under 2 inches with that guy, and a little over 1.5 inches with this guy. Well, many moons ago, I had run the calculations, like back when I was first starting to build AR-15s, and this is what I was using. And the numbers came out to like 5, 6, 7 foot-pounds of inaccuracy when using one of these guys. Now, the Tapco tool, with over twice the distance here, it was a much bigger deal than I'm used to. I also mentioned back in that video that with my AR-15 barrel nuts, I generally start around 30 foot-pounds and go to around 50 foot-pounds. I'm well under like the maximum. If I'm over torquing my barrel nuts a little, it's not a big deal, because it's a pretty wide range, right? Like 30 foot-pounds all the way up to 80. I've seen people use 100, which is getting a little bit crazy. But 80 isn't crazy. Like the upper we built in the last video, I'm not worried about it. I've run the numbers and it's sitting at about 80 foot-pounds. It's higher than I want to be. It's higher than Aero Precision said we should be, but it's nothing I'm going to freak out about. But I wish I would have done it properly in the last video, and I didn't. Now, another thing you can do is, rather than having your wrench like this, if you turn it 90 degrees, that is supposed to cancel out the error. So do it at 90 degrees and your torque wrench numbers are correct. I must admit, I'm okay with math. I'm not the greatest when it comes to basic physics. So this warps my brain a little bit, just a little bit, but I do see it recommended in a lot of places that you go 90 degrees. And with one of these short little guys, it wouldn't be a big deal. Now with the Tapco tool, that's getting a little bit crazy, right? Trying to deal with that guy in a 90-degree configuration. So I hope that makes sense. I appreciate all of you guys bringing that up. I'll have a link down in the description to a website where you can go and put in, that's what you put in. You put in the distance from the center of your handle to your drive, and then from the drive to the center of your nut, and it'll give you the numbers. Then you can, adjust your torque setting is necessary. Like in the last video, we wanted to be right around 65 foot-pounds. I should have been at about 50 foot-pounds on my torque wrench. So the next most popular comment was about timing the barrel nut and getting that clearance just right for our gas tube. And that was a bit of a challenge in that video. A lot of people asked, why not just take your Dremel tool or a file and fire off the little nibbin that's in your way. And that sounds like a really good idea to me. That's the way we were headed in the last video, but luckily we found one of the nuts that lined up well enough. I don't think that would hurt a thing to just buzz one of those off just a little bit. Another person mentioned that Aero Precision has a shim kit where you can add shims under your barrel nut until it lines up the way you want it to. Now, of course, I bought two different hand guards, and one of them came in the full retail packaging like this. So I was able to have a close look in here, and there was no shims. So it seems that shims are a thing. You can order them on their website, but the hand guards don't come with them, unfortunately. Someone else mentioned that I could just use the receiver lapping tool and continue to, lap a little bit more out of the receiver until the barrel nut lined up properly. That would work as well. So several very creative ways. Once I start putting the 6.5 Creedmoor upper together, I'll probably just hit the stupid thing with a Dremel. I don't think it's worth the time to try and order shims or mess around with those. So yeah, I think I'll just Dremel it off a little bit. A lot of you guys recommended that, and a lot of you said you'd do that sometimes. So I didn't see anybody warning against it, and I can't imagine why it would screw anything up. So let's see, we talked about torque inaccuracy, we talked about barrel nut alignment. Several people were bringing up other Vise blocks that work well for them. There are definitely some good options on the market. I was happy with the Performance of the Plastics Revolution setup in the last video. A lot of you guys brought up the reaction rod type, and I think Magpul's got one that, yeah, like Magpul's got one. I don't think they have it for the AR-10, but looks pretty cool for the AR-15. So yeah, there was some Vise block discussion in the comments, and there seemed to be a lot of good options available out there. So the last thing I want to talk about, someone had asked me whether I was going to be testing Headspace in this upper, and the answer is no. I don't have a set of Headspace gauges for 308 or 6.5 Creedmoor. So whether or not it's smart, I'm relying on Aero Precision and Ballistic Advantage, which are basically the same company. And I'm hoping that their bolt carrier is going to fit properly and Headspace properly with their barrels. The smart move certainly would be to get a set of Headspace gauges. But I've got something that's kind of going to help a little bit. Luckily, I have two other 308 rifles. I've got a Tikka bolt action rifle that has a pretty tight chamber, and I've got a Savage lever action that has a pretty loose chamber. Headspace in that guy a little bit more excessive than in the Tikka. So I'm going to try and use fired brass from those two guns to, at the very least, maybe get a feel for the Headspace in this chamber. So let me readjust the camera and we'll go through that really quick. All right, so first I've got some Lapua brass that was fired in my Tikka. Now the Tikka has a reasonably tight chamber. This is the D400 insert in the Hornady Headspace comparator kit, and fired Tikka brass is about 1.622. And here's the second piece, exactly the same, just like we would expect. Now the same measurement with my brass from my Savage with the looser chamber is 1.627. Sometimes I see 1.628. Yep, we'll call it 1.627. So we've got, what, 4 or 5 thousandths of difference between our two types of fired brass. Now, if we take a piece of Lapua from the Tikka and try and slide it in, no problem at all. It goes right into battery. Here's the second piece. Right in, no problems. So we know at least it has a little more headspace than the Tikka. Here's our first piece of Savage brass. And it absolutely will not go into battery. So I've already run this test. And you might be thinking to yourself, how can you be sure it's Headspace? Maybe the Savage is just sloppier in the body. I'm glad you asked. You're a pretty sharp guy. Here's another piece of brass that I've actually run through a sizing die so that it sized the body, but the sizing die was backed off quite a bit so that it didn't hit the shoulder. I think you can actually see on the neck. That's kind of cool. Hold on. Yeah, let's zoom in a little bit. Yeah, you can see I had the sizing die pretty high. It didn't come down all the way to the junction of the neck and the shoulder. You see that? So this piece still has the long headspace number. Yeah, this piece is 1.628. So skinny body, but tall in the headspace department. Let's see if it fits. Nope, does not fit. So my conclusion after those tests is that the headspace of this here 308 is in between my Tikka and my Savage, both of which I've safely fired for years. So that seems like a good headspace check. Is it not? If it's not, please let me know. Tell me the flaw in that logic if it is indeed flawed. All right, let's move on to the reloading portion of today's video program. I already mentioned I started pulling out bullets and I couldn't stop myself. So here's the lineup we want to shoot. All the way down at 110 grains is the Hornady Z-Max. We've got the 125 grain Sierra tipped Match King, the 150 grain Hornady SST, the 168 grain Sierra Match King, the 168 grain Hornady AMAX, and the 175 grain Sierra Match King. I wanted to keep going, you know, 180s, maybe some 200s, but I had to draw the line somewhere. We're going to get to some heavier stuff as well, but at least for today, yeah, I just had to draw the line. We're going to go up to the 175 grain Match King. There are a couple of these decisions I really only made because I've got a small quantity of bullets I want to get rid of. With the 125 grain tipped Match King, I only have 10 of these left, so I want to shoot them up. So I want to load up 10 of the 125 grain tipped Match King. The stupid 168 grain Hornady AMAX. I've got 9 of those left. What in the world are you supposed to do with 9 bullets? So I want to shoot up all 9 of those just to get rid of them. Our primary test bullet, like the one we used to get the scope sighted in, make sure the gun doesn't blow up, that sort of stuff, is going to be the 168 grain Sierra Match King. So the way the numbers all work out, I'm going to have 16 of those. And then the remaining 3 will have 5 shots of those. Is that confusing enough? It's a little bit confusing, but it gets rid of some weird quantities of bullets that I've had laying around. I hate that, right? Like, what are you supposed to do with 9 bullets? Now for load data, I'm mainly going out of the Hornady manual and the Sierra load data. I tried to pick some powders that I think might be accurate. With that 110 grain Hornady Z-Max, I want to shoot Alliant Reloader 7. Light bullet, fast powder. Reloader 7 just recently gave us some astounding accuracy in 223 with some really light bullets. So I'm hoping maybe we'll have a good combo here. 110 grain bullets with Reloader 7. The 125 grain tipped Match King, I want to shoot Hodgdon H322. Slightly heavier bullet, slightly slower powder, but still a very fast powder for 308. So that's the 125 tipped Match King. The 150 grain Hornady SST, we're going to shoot IMR 4895. This should be an ideal powder for the AR-10, I would think. So that's what we'll use with the 150s. Now the 168 grainers, this is the only spherical powder I'm going to shoot. I want to shoot CFE 223 with both the 168 grain Sierra Match King and the 168 grain Hornady AMAX. The main reason is half of our ammo is with the 168 grain bullets. We've got 25 of those loads. So CFE 223 should meter really well. I'll be able to put this in my powder measure and throw charges that are just about perfect, maybe trickle them just a little bit to get them perfect, but it should be pretty easy. So CFE 223 is kind of my bulk powder here that's easy to throw. And last up with the 175 grain Sierra Match King, I'm going with Vihtavuori M540. Now in Sierra's load data they have, for hunting bullets, they've got recommended hunting loads and recommended accuracy loads. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, but it gives you a good place to start from. So that's what I'm doing. This was their accuracy load for the 175 grain Match King, was within 540. So let's give it a try. Let's see if it shoots well in this application. So here's a list of all of the charge weights and overall lengths. The only one I didn't have a manual recommended overall length for is the 125 grain Sierra tipped Match King. It wasn't in the manual I had. They've probably released some updated data over on the Sierra Bullets blog maybe for this. I think this is a reasonably new bullet. So there's probably updated data. Whatever, I don't have it. We're just going to go with 2.8 inches. I put a bullet in a case. That seating depth looks just fine. So we'll just go with 2.8 inches for that guy. Now each of these bullets I did measure in this gun to see what the maximum overall length is to the lands. So I've got the jump listed there. That's the amount of jump to the lands. See, the 125 and the 150 are both pretty long at 185 thousandths of jump and 152 thousandths of jump. All of the others are in that 60 to 80 thousandths of jump range. So I don't know. We'll see. Those don't seem like unreasonable numbers, right? Like 168 grain Sierra Match King at 2.8 inches is 63 thousandths of jump. That seems reasonable. So it doesn't look like this gun has got a particularly long throat, but then again, it doesn't seem super short either, right? It seems good. These are reasonable jump numbers. As we move forward, I haven't really even messed with these magazines. I tell you, I'm not going to do it right now. But once we get some rounds loaded at 2.8 inches, I'll be interested to see how much extra space we've got left. We might be able to go a little bit longer than 2.8. I don't know. But for today, we're going to stick with the book numbers, which are 2.8, for just about everything except some of the lighter bullets are a touch shorter. For charge weights, I tried to kind of just pick something in the middle of the range. None of these are max charges. None of them are all the way down to starting charges. They're all just kind of right in the middle. I didn't want to start too low because we do have an adjustable gas block on this gun. So our first few shots, we're going to need to be cranking on that a little bit probably to get the gun functioning properly. So setting up the adjustable gas block to run properly with middle of the road charges seemed like the best plan to go with. So that's the way I went. Now for brass, we're going to use Starline brass, at least for this video here. I'll probably buy a new set of brass for this gun. This 50 pieces of Starline have been fired. Half of them were fired in my Tikka, the other half were fired in my Savage, and they've got a couple firings on them. So they should be fine. I don't expect any problems, but we may end up getting another batch of brass. These are looking shiny, so they've been cleaned and they have already been resized. And I've checked in the gun. They seem to be chambering in the gun, no problem. I was going to show resizing in this video, but these were already resized. So whatever, man. We'll save that for next time. So these are cleaned, they're sized, they're trimmed. The case mouths have been deburred and chamfered, and they're ready for primers. So that's going to be our first step. I haven't even picked a primer. All right, let's just go with some CCI number 200 primers, just standard large rifle primers. So that's step one. I can't wait to see how this gun's going to shoot, particularly the barrel, because keep in mind, its previous owner had pulled it out because he was not happy with its accuracy. That's another reason why I really want to cast a wide net today. I'm trying a few too many bullets and a few too many powders than I probably should here for a first video, but I'm just interested to see if we have those same accuracy problems, and if we do, whether it trends towards certain bullet weights or whatever. Should be fun. So I'm almost done with priming here. Nothing all that interesting going on here. I'm using my RCBS hand priming tool. They're all going in nicely. And we're ready for powder. All right, we're going one powder at a time. Try not to get ourselves confused. First up is Reloader 7. We're only doing 5 rounds of Reloader 7, so it's not worth taking the time to fill up a trickler. So we'll just do it the long and frustrating way here. 38.0. And on to the next one. So the last video I did like this, where we were testing a new barrel or a new gun, and I shot a whole bunch of different bullets with a whole bunch of different powders. And just like today, I'm just shooting one charge weight with each bullet. Somebody had commented saying, what's the point? Like, you're just picking some random charge weight. Who's to say that's not just a really bad load for that powder? And maybe a half grain more powder, it would shoot perfect. I don't disagree with that. Like, definitely even today, if a certain powder or a certain bullet doesn't shoot well, I won't write them off. You know, maybe a little bit of load work up and they would be just fine. So, but that's not to say a test like this doesn't have value, or at least I think it does. All right, I'm rambling. I'm not even paying attention to what's going on. First up is the 110 grain Hornady Z-Max. Our overall length with this guy is 2.740, using a Forster Ultra Micrometer seating die, which is set too high. I don't think the bullet even touched. Okay, let's try that. That's still very, very long. Still 113 thousandths long. 25, 50, 75, 100. Let's remeasure at 100. 17 more. Okay, let's see how that looks. Yep, 2.740. The next one is 2.740. 2.740. All right. You know, I do have a crimp die, like a Lee Factory crimp die here somewhere. But you know what? Today, I don't think we're going to crimp at all. We will go crimpless for the time being and just see what happens. So I think this is where I am going to leave you, and I will just see you guys out on the range. All of this confusion with different bullets and different powders. I don't want to make a mix-up, and you guys make the process confusing sometimes when I've got to talk. So I'm going to keep loading. I'll see you all on the range. All right, folks, let's get this party started. So I have put a 4-16 Vortex scope on this guy, and we're going to be shooting from a GG&G bipod. And I've got a nice stable rear bag back here. To start with, our target is at 50 yards. We're going to need to do a little bit of cranking on the scope, no doubt. Now you remember, our test charge is with the 168 grain Sierra Match King and CFE 223. So that's what we're going to be shooting first. These were at a 2.8 inch overall length, and looking at the clearance here in the Magpul magazine, looks like we're going to have at least 15 or 20 more thousandths probably that we can go long. That might be very useful as we go forward with bullet testing. So 2.8 inches definitely fits in there nicely. So 3 rounds in the magazine, target at 50 yards. I'll tell you what we should probably do. Let's drop the bolt, and then we'll pull that round out and have a look at it. I don't see any major nonsense going on here. A few nicks along the ogive of the bullet, which probably happened on the ejection as it drug across the barrel extension. And I do have calipers out here. Let me double check overall length. Overall length is still absolutely perfect. So, all right, let's quit stalling and see if this guy blows our face off. All right, safety on. My face is still intact. So the piece of brass didn't go very far. Let's see if it fed the next round. Yep, it sure did. And that second round looks fine. Good, so function-wise, looks just fine. Maybe we won't have to spend half the day cranking on an adjustable gas block. Now, the main reason I brought calipers out here is so we can measure the headspace on this piece of fired brass. On a piece of unfired ammunition, this brass is reading 1.623, and the fired piece is 1.625. Fantastic. So it doesn't look like we have any headspace problem. The brass is getting chewed up a little bit. I'll give you a look at it once we're back at the bench. It's not terrible, but it's definitely taken some nicks. All right, let's get this beast sighted in. I need to come up 7 minutes and go right about 2 minutes. All right, let's see where that puts us. Okay, up 2 more and right 2 more minutes. Good, I think we're ready to put the target at 100 yards. All right, so you might have noticed it doesn't look like the bolt locked all the way back. Yep, it didn't. I'm not going to freak out over that. This bolt carrier group still needs to get broken in, and also I'm not shooting suppressed, so I don't mind being a little bit undergassed when I'm not suppressed. So maybe it'll work out. Okay, the target is now at 100 yards. I've put out my Caldwell Ballistic Precision chronograph, so we'll start to get some velocity data. We're still shooting the 168 grain Sierra Match King with CFE 223. So let's shoot a 4-shot group at the left-hand dot. All right, got a little failure to feed here. That kind of sucks. Yeah, the shoulder of this guy got dented in pretty well, but hopefully that'll fire form out. failure to fire there. Yeah, it didn't feed the next round. I think we're going to need more gas. All right, that's kind of ugly for our first group. Okay, next, let's do a 4-shot group with the suppressor on there. This is my Silencer Co. Omega suppressor. That should probably clear up the gas problems. Let's find out. I'll shoot this group at the center dot. Okay, that wasn't good. One in the magazine, one in the chamber, I'm guessing. Yep, so I guess it was just a double. Now, if we think all the way back, holy crap, the sun is screwing up my shot here, isn't it? Well, if we think all the way back to video 1, where I was talking about my trigger selection, I mentioned that I wondered whether these light triggers might cause me some problems in the AR-10 platform with doubling. I have a very light trigger finger when I'm shooting on a bench like this. So I'll go ahead and finish out this video with this trigger, but it might be the smart bet to swap in that heavier one. It was like a 5.5, 6 pounder. We might go that direction. I don't know. Let's see if it happens again. I want to make sure I really got my shoulder into this guy. I felt like I was, you know, holding on to the last one fine, so I don't know what the heck. Yep, did it again. You know what, on second thought, the sun's shining in my lens. I'm just going to go ahead and go back inside and swap out this trigger. Yep, I think that's the smart thing to do. Let's go swap triggers. All right, folks, it is the following day. I'm never going to get this stupid video put out, but I thought it was worth taking a few minutes to ponder the situation we're in. One thing I wanted to show you guys, I lubed the heck out of this gun. When I first put it together, man, the bolt carrier group inside of the upper was just feeling like it felt gritty and felt like it needed lube. So I had really slathered the upper with quite a bit of lube, and a lot of it has come down here into the lower, and you can see as I was shooting it was seeping out. If you've ever over lubed your AR, I'm sure you're familiar with what we're looking at. So is it possible that some lube got into the trigger mechanism and was causing some sort of a problem? I don't know, but I want to swap in a different trigger like I had mentioned on the range. And like I had mentioned earlier on when we were first building this lower, I suspected I might have doubling issues, and I'm not ready to blame the trigger. It's me bump firing accidentally. The way I shoot on the bench, like my hand's not even on the grip like this. It's more like this. I'm barely touching anything. I'm using the absolute lightest trigger pull that I possibly can. And this 308, you know, it's got a heck of a lot more recoil than the AR-15 cartridges I shoot. So, you know, with this more recoil, I might need to get a better hold of the grip. I might need to be a little bit more deliberate with my trigger pulls rather than squeezing super gently and waiting on a surprise shot. Yeah, I may just need to alter how I do things. But I've got two triggers. I've got the LaRue MBT, yep, this guy, and I think it is a 2.5 pound first stage, 2 pound second stage. The CMC trigger that's in the lower right now is a 2.2, so this is a 2.52. And we've also got this other CMC that is a 2.4. So 2 pound first stage, 4 pound second. So that's what I've been pondering, you know, since I left the range. Which trigger should I go with? I think I'm going to go ahead and go with the other CMC, with the heavier CMC. Let's give CMC a chance to actually work well for us. Although, you know, because, you know, this is the same problem I'd had with some other CMC triggers. I think it probably just comes down to my technique somehow. I'm just screwing it up. I don't want to be a trigger review channel. Like, I don't want to get bogged down here. I just want a stupid AR-10 that runs well so we can move forward and get on to reloading. So that's what I'm going to do here. The other CMC is going in this dude. Another thing I wanted to show you while we're off the range is some of this brass. Here are the first two pieces I pulled out of the box. And you'll see some rim damage here. So I think that extractor, well, for one, it's certainly related to gas, but also, you know, we might need to clean some burrs off of our extractor or something like that. I don't know. Case mouths are getting banged up just a touch, but these two pieces don't seem too bad. Here's one that got a pretty healthy ejector burr on it to go along with the love bites on the rim there. So our brass is kind of having a rough time here to start out with, man. Not too bad, but a little. All right, so to replace this trigger, I'm just going to pull off the grip, remove the safety selector, pop the old trigger out, pop the new trigger in. I'm not going to show you all the details, but I'm going to get the lube dried off of this guy, get the new trigger put in, and I'll see you guys back out on the range here in just a second. So I've been doing a little bit of dry fire practice and testing with this new trigger. It's certainly heavier, but I kind of like it. Right, 6 pounds total is not too bad. Yeah, maybe this will work out. So we're right back where we were. We've got a fresh target at 100 yards. We've got the Caldwell chronograph sitting out there. And I've got the gun back in the configuration it was in when we had the problem, which is suppressor on. Now, if you're wondering why the problem started when we put the suppressor on, it really had to do with the increased recoil. Now that might seem weird because usually a suppressor kind of acts a lot like a brake to reduce recoil. But in this case, it increased recoil because without the suppressor, if you remember, we weren't quite locking the bolt back and our whole gas system just wasn't quite working hard enough to get us normal function. We put the suppressor on there, much more gas. Now our bolt carrier is moving a whole lot faster with a whole lot more energy in the rearward direction. And I think we were pretty overgassed, so maybe everything was bottoming out and just causing increased recoil. And I think that additional recoil is what was causing the bump fire situation. So hopefully the heavier trigger helps with that. Here's what I want to try first. We've got the suppressor back on, so we're in the same configuration we were in. I want to give you guys an up-close view of my trigger hand. Like I mentioned back at the bench, I have a very loose grip and I'm very lightly touching the trigger. Now, while all of that is going on, I do have the bipod nice and loaded, right? I've got a lot of forward pressure on the bipod. We've got a little board here on the bench so we can get lots of forward pressure to load that bipod. And usually that helps a lot with controlling that additional recoil. In this case, with this amount of recoil with that previous trigger, I'm hoping it was just a bad combo and it was just leading me to a situation where a bump fire was going on. So hopefully we don't have the problem here. So let's just get to it. Like I mentioned, we've got a target at 100 yards. I've got a dot for each of the different bullets we're testing. After the last shots we took, I did move the scope down about 2 minutes. So I think our zero is going to be pretty close. So let's start with our lightest bullet, the 110 grain Hornady Z-Max. Now we're going to shoot more in an unsuppressed configuration, but at least here for the beginning of this test, I want to duplicate this scenario that caused us problems previously. So the suppressor's on there for the time being. So let's see how the 110 shoot. All right, here for the first group with the 110 grain Z-Max, I'll try and give you guys an up-close view of what's going on down here during my normal shooting. So of course, we're sitting on a rear bag. I do also keep a second bag, just a little Coltac bag that I rest my arm on and then I get around the grip. So that second bag allows me to have a very relaxed trigger hand. Now here's the thing, I'm not saying this is a good way to shoot, I'm just explaining to you guys exactly how I've found that I group the best. I might be breaking a whole lot of rules of basic marksmanship here, I don't know. But the hand loosely sets in the grip and this guy is locked and loaded and ready to go, so let me put it on safe. I load up the bipod with my shoulder and then there's very little pressure down here. the main point of contact is my trigger finger on the trigger. So that might be what's going on. You know, I need to get into the grip. I need to shoot the thing like it was intended to be shot. But let's go ahead and rattle off this group and I'll show you guys my normal trigger method. Keep in mind, I've never shot this trigger, right? This is our 2-pound, 4-pound CMC trigger. Let's see if we can shoot a group. All right, so at this point I've settled in my bags. My scope, my gun is naturally pointing at the dot I'm looking to shoot at. Then as I move forward, it's just more settling of the bags. Adjust my trigger hand bag maybe just a little bit. And I don't start my trigger pull until I am 100% settled at the center of my dot. Bipod nice and loaded. Crosshair is settled. So now I'm going to start my trigger pull. It's going to be as light as possible, and the shot should come as a complete surprise. And then reset the trigger afterwards. So that felt completely fine. So I'm going to keep this same view. We'll go ahead and finish off this group. All right, so that brass was ejecting to about 1:30 to 2 o'clock. We did lock the bolt back. So I think we're definitely a bit overgassed with the suppressor, no doubt about it. The group with the Z-Max was pretty gross looking. Velocity 2796, okay, good deal. So hopefully this trigger is gonna work better for us. Let me go to a normal shot with my bench camera here and let's start shooting some groups. All right, so next up is the 125 grain Sierra tipped Match King. So this is one of the bullets where we've got more than 5 rounds. So what I want to do is shoot the first group unsuppressed. So I've removed our suppressor and let's see if these guys will group. Okay, failure to fire there. So I'm guessing we didn't quite feed the next round. Okay, that one didn't quite eject enough. Same thing here. Yeah, our poor brass is getting beat up just a little bit. Tell you what, I think I mentioned it in one of the earlier videos, but the spring in this guy is very heavy. So working the charging handle is a bit of a pain in the butt. I may have to go to one of the big charging handles that has a nice handle you can get a hold of. Like in the AR-15 world, I never bother. Like I'm not going to spend money on a fancy charging handle, but the stupid spring in this guy is so heavy that it might be worth it on an AR-10 build to go with a better charging handle. Okay, so next I want to try the exact same load, the 125 grain Sierra Match King, the tipped Match King, with the suppressor. So one important thing we're looking for here, I'm going to go ahead and shoot it at the same dot. I'm not going to move my scope. So we're looking for point of impact shift with and without the suppressor. So far it looks like it's not going to be a ton. So hopefully that trend continues here with the 125 grain tipped Match King. The other thing, I think it's clear at this point, with the gas system set the way it has been since the beginning, we are way under gassed when we're not suppressed. So I needed to open up the gas a little bit for unsuppressed use. And for suppressed use, we're way over gassed. We're ejecting to 1 and 2 o'clock. We're tearing up brass. So it looks like that suppressed to unsuppressed gap is going to be pretty wide here, at least in 308. And I'm sure that'll be different for different powders and stuff like that. So whatever. Here for the time being, I'm going to start turning the gas down. My normal viewers know I generally shoot suppressed. I try and be the best neighbor I can. I do have some neighbors that aren't that far away, and you know, dropping a couple hundred rounds of unsuppressed 308 is enough to, you know, annoy neighbors sometimes. So trying to keep it trying to keep the noise level down. So we're going to try and tune this gas system for suppressed use. We'll see how it goes. We are going to shoot a couple more groups unsuppressed, so fear not. But at least for the time being, I've turned down the gas just a little bit. So we'll see how it runs here with the suppressor. I'm talking in circles. Let's get to shooting. All right, so it looks like our suppressor shift is going to be very manageable with this barrel. Looks like putting the suppressor on brought us up maybe a minute to a minute and a half, but that is pretty darn close. I'm happy with that. So I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and come down a minute, or a minute and a quarter. Puts us right at the number 6 here, so let's go with that. And I'll tell you what, let's come right a half a minute. There we go. That might get us a little bit closer to the orange. Now, I think the group size between suppressed and unsuppressed was pretty much exactly the same, which is not really good news because we're looking at like, I don't know, 2-inch groups down there. I don't like 2-inch groups. I like 1-inch groups or half-inch groups. I don't like 2-inch groups. And velocities, suppressed and unsuppressed, we lost about 10 feet per second here when we put the suppressor on. I think with 5-shot groups, that's probably just or insufficient data, but looks like we were around 2670 with the 125 grain Sierra tip to Match King. Next up is going to be the 150 grain Hornady SST. This is the one with 42 grains of IMR 4895. All right, so I did turn the gas down just a little bit more. So let's see if the 150 grain SST will group. Okay, misfire there. I'm guessing I turned my gas down just a little bit too much. Yep, I didn't pick up the next round. So I'll tell you what, I'm gonna lock the bolt back and turn the gas back up just a little bit. All right, so I've turned the gas up just a little bit and I made a pretty small adjustment. So I'm wondering whether this is going to be a situation where this is a very fine adjustment. Getting the gas system right on this guy might be something that we're always chasing. All right, let's see if we can get a group going. All right, so much better gas there. Maybe just a little bit overgassed, but everything cycled fine. We locked the bolt back, so this is probably a good place to leave it for the rest of our video here. All right, so my phone battery died. So I took a little break to let the phone charge. I only got 2 velocity readings from the last group, 2601 and 2608. So a little over 2,600 feet per second, that's close enough. All right, let's shoot unsuppressed here for a little bit. We've got the gas just about right for suppressed shooting, maybe just a little bit overgassed, but we're going to be way undergassed here without the suppressor, but we'll give it a try anyway. Next up is 5 rounds of our 168 grain Sierra Match King. Let's see what happens. Yeah, didn't quite eject that round. Okay, it did eject the brass, but I'm guessing it probably did not. Yep, didn't load the next round. Okay, he did not lock the bolt back. That's not a big surprise. Okay, so that's another pretty crappy group. So next up is going to be the 168 grain AMAX, the Hornady AMAX. Now we've got 9 of these rounds. So let's shoot a 4-shot group, unsuppressed, and see how these do, and then the next 5 we'll put the suppressor back on. So 168 grain AMAX with CFE 223. All right, so that's another super crappy group. The next 5 rounds with the 168 grain AMAX, we are going to shoot with the suppressor. So I would expect a point of impact shift of about a minute or a minute and a half higher than the last group. Let's see what happens. All right, terrible accuracy, but we at least did run the gun properly, the bolt locked back, all of that garbage. We've only got 5 rounds left. This is the 175 grain Sierra Match King with Vitavorey N540. Let's see what happens. Holy crap, folks, we finally shot a group. Can you believe it? I think that's the load that was it was the labeled accuracy load in the Sierra manual. So I guess maybe they do know what they're talking about. All right, we've got a whole lot to talk about. First of all, the CMC trigger, the 2-pound, 4-pound, 2-stage trigger felt excellent. It felt more appropriate for this level of recoil. Hopefully that makes sense. As soon as I started shooting it, it just felt more comfortable in this setup. It's like magic. So of course, no more problems with doubling. So I'm gonna get packed up. Let's get back to the bench. We'll talk all of this crap out. All right, let's have a quick look at some brass. I gave it a quick look and flipped over some of the worst ones. Yeah, so let's have a look at these. Yeah, just a nice little ejector mark on that dude. That one's actually not quite so bad. There were some worse ones in here. There, that one's got a nice little burr on it. So we got some ejector marks. We've got some bite marks on our rim from the extractor. But all in all, I think we're okay. I think once I get the gas system tuned out a little bit more, yeah, there's another one that kind of raised up a bit of a burr there by the ejector. Took a little bit of damage. Actually, this is kind of good. Like this batch of Starline brass I'm working with here. Like I had mentioned earlier, we've got several firings on it. So I guess if I'm going to be rough on brass, it's better to be rough on some brass that is already like halfway through its service life. You know, that's probably a pretty good rule just in general. Anytime you got a new gas gun you're taking out for the first time, it's probably not that smart to go and load up a bunch of brand new Lapua brass or something that before you even get your gas system working halfway decent. So yeah, so I don't really, I don't see any scary pressure signs, but there's just a whole lot of signs of gas tuning problems. So once we get the gas running properly, hopefully a lot of this sort of stuff will go away. All right, so let's take one more quick look at the groups. it's not even worth the time to measure these out. Except for our very last group with the 175 grain Sierra Match King, that group is right at 1 inch. But outside of that, there's a whole bunch of 2 and 2.5 inch groups, which is just not even close to being acceptable. So here's my idea for the next steps we take here with the AR-10. So I mean, this shouldn't be a huge surprise. Aaron, who sent us the barrel, told us it didn't shoot, so I'm not going to get too bummed about this. But there are two things I want to do. The first thing, the next video, I want to shoot some more of the 175 grain Sierra Match Kings, right? We saw a 1 inch group. That's not too bad. So let's shoot some more of those guys and see how they do. I've also got some, like here's some 185 grain Burger Hybrid targets. I've got some 180 grain Hornady SSTs, some 200 grain Match Kings, some 208 grain ELD match bullets. Maybe it's a heavy thing, right? Maybe this gun likes heavy bullets. So that's going to be the next video, is trying some heavier bullets in a similar setup to this video. Just pick some loads, pick some powders, load them up and see how they do. The other thing I want to do at this point though, is start looking at alternative barrels. So I'm going to need advice from you guys as to which way I should go with it for a barrel, for a 308 barrel. Because that's the thing, I am 100% committed to 308 in the AR-10 platform. Now with Ballistic Advantage, who makes the barrel we tested today, they've got a chance to redeem themselves in the 6.5 Creedmoor, right? Our 6.5 Creedmoor upper is going to have a Ballistic Advantage barrel. So I'm thinking for the 308 barrel, maybe we should try something different. Now, I don't mind spending a few extra dollars on this next 308 barrel to really get a nice premium setup, but I don't want to get ridiculous. Like, don't tell me to buy a $1,000 Proof Research carbon fiber barrel or something. I'm sure it's a great barrel, but that's just a little bit too high speed for me. I wish White Oak Armament made AR-10 barrels, but I'm pretty sure they don't. So you guys let me know what you think. But like I said, we'll have one more video with this barrel, at least one more video. We'll test some of these heavier bullets and just see how it performs with them. But otherwise, very happy. The 2-pound, 4-pound CMC trigger that I was shooting today felt good. And I think I had explained it earlier on the range as it feels more appropriate. It feels, the little bit heavier trigger just feels better. It feels like a better match, I should say. But I mean, of course, that'll all be personal preference. And, you know, I tried to give you guys a good look at how I shoot and the reason I think that the problem showed up. So yeah, whatever. It is what it is. I think we've got a good trigger. I'm going to leave this one in the gun for the time being, and we'll just keep on testing. If we run into problems, we'll fix them. And if we don't run into problems, then that's awesome. And the trigger we pulled out, the lighter trigger, we'll try this in an AR-15 here on the channel in the future. I don't think the trigger was bad. I think I was just bump firing it. Another thing that I think it was sufficiently annoying that I'm going to go ahead and order a replacement. Just the standard charging handle. Yeah, this little guy with kind of, you know, the traditional design handle, I guess, whatever, your standard style. I need something to grab a hold of in this gun. The buffer spring is just heavy. Tell you what, just doing a quick, you know, 50 round inspection on the bolt carrier and the inside of the upper, I don't see anything wearing weird. Yeah, everything seems fine. All right, is there anything else we need to talk about? Yeah, I really don't think there is. I think we've covered it. So this is kind of video number 3 in the AR-10 build series. I guess I should probably do a 4th. So the next video where we're shooting heavier bullets, we'll go ahead and we'll call that the wrap-up video for this little AR-10 build series. So in that next video, not only will we test more bullets, but by that point, hopefully you guys will have given me some feedback. Maybe we can talk more about the barrel options. You know, one thing I'll probably do before the next video is, so right now the barrel is a little bit over torqued. So the handguard comes off nice and easy. Everything comes apart nice and easy. So I think before the next video, I'll pull it apart and I'll re-torque that barrel nut down a little bit, you know, to, well, they said 65 foot-pounds, so that's what I'll do. I'll pull this guy apart. Right now it's at about 80 foot-pounds. I'll just crack it loose, retorque it at 65 for the next video. All right, folks, I think that's where we'll leave it. Once again, thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you guys who helped out with this AR-10 project. We'll get a nice 308 barrel in this guy and get it shooting really well. We're just getting started. So I hope you'll stick with me. I will see you guys next time.